I am pleased that we have with us tonight the president retired of Baylor Healthcare Systems in Dallas, Texas. Baylor Healthcare Systems is one of the largest private healthcare systems in the world. It is merged into Baylor Scott and White, which is the largest healthcare system now in Texas. We have with us Boone Powell Jr. He's known to the world as Boone Powell Jr. He's known to his grandkids as Boomer. He's known to me as Dad. Dad, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Carrie.
I also have to say my dad has one of the best laughs in the entire world. But anyway, we have my dad with us tonight. Dad, tell us a little bit about, quickly, your healthcare background and how you got into healthcare.
Well, I got into healthcare in the late 50s and early 60s. It was a spiritual direction for me of what I wanted to do. The healing work is right out of the New Testament, and it was a pleasure to spend my time in business and in healing together. So I felt like we made a real contribution to that, and it's very rewarding because you do things for people. You don't expect them to do anything back for you. It's the element of service that's so important.
Mm-hmm. Servant leadership and all about the people.
All about that.
That's right. And your dad had some healthcare background too, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He for 35 years he was a healthcare executive. In fact, he was at Baylor for many of those years before I ever arrived, and he loved it. He made a great contribution building up the main hospital in Dallas.
That's right, and he had something to do with the hospital in Philadelphia.
Well, he's hanging around there. What that means, that's where the Healthcare Hall of Fame is, and he was admitted to that along with some of his other colleagues.
And Ben Franklin too, right, Dad?
That's it. Ben Franklin was the founder of it, and if you want to see something fascinating, go to the Pennsylvania Hospital, and they have a museum set up of what a hospital was like many, many years ago. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was that the preferred time to do surgery was noon. Today, surgeons want it at the beginning of the day, but then it was noon, and the reason was they didn't have any operating room lights.
Oh, my goodness.
So they had to maximize the light from the outside to have a chance to do good surgery.
That's fascinating. Okay, so one of the things you did when you were president at Baylor Healthcare Systems is you helped take care of a severe nursing shortage at that time. How did you do that?
Yes, it was terrible around the country. We had hundreds of position vacancies when I joined Baylor, but it was like any other healthcare system, and we had some nurses that were very innovative, and they were trying to figure out how we could increase the employment of nurses. Mm-hmm. Which were very scarce. The nurse was very scarce, and somebody read an article in a Human Resources magazine about a tire company in Ohio, and they had a problem in that they had more business than they could handle. They were trying to take their plant and increase the capacity, and they wondered if there were any of their employees would be willing to work on the weekend. And so they asked them, and some of them were. So they started running their plant on the weekend and paying employees almost full salary for working 2 12-hour shifts, and all of a sudden their production went way up. Well, one of our nurses picked up on that and called the human relations person to say, tell us a little bit what you've done and how does it work and how do the people respond to it. And then asked them the question, do you think it might work in a setting like a hospital where we have shortage of supplies with nurses? He says, well, I think it might work, but let me double check because my wife's a nurse. So he talked it over with her and called back and said, we think it actually might work. And so you have continuity of care between shifts and so forth that you have to look at. But we tried it, worked on it, and got the model right, and announced it. And the first day we had 500 inquiries about this kind of new model. And what it did was it broke the logjam of having to be working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then maybe Saturday and Sunday. It was just disruptive to the life of people and to their families and so forth. And this opened up many avenues for people to either work just in the week or work on the weekend. And I can't tell you how popular it was. It spread like wildfire across the United States, and many people many organizations applied it or applied some facsimile of it.
Fantastic. So a nurse had a choice of working the 5 weekdays or almost full-time 2 12-hour shifts on the weekend, and this allowed them all kinds of flexibility with their families and especially with childcare.
Oh, yeah. And then now, today, it's been modified a lot more than that. In fact, we had a nurse here for lunch the other day after church, and she was working, I think, 4 10-hour shifts to get it in. So she had 3 days off. So you can manage that kind of idea any way that kind of works, but it has created a lot of flexibility for healthcare employees.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to fast forward to the early 1990s. Bill Clinton is president, January 1993, and you were the founder of Healthcare Leadership Council. And
one of the 3 of us that founded it. Yeah.
Okay, one of the founders, and at the time you were the chairman when Mrs. Hillary Clinton came to visit, about 30 or 40 of you on this council. Tell us about that meeting, Dad.
Well, she had assumed responsibility from her husband to create a revised health care plan for the United States. It went along with kind of the liberal view of what they wanted to do, and that's basically have socialized medicine or a system where it's managed and controlled by the government. And our group preferred the private initiative to it, so we invited her to come and share the ideas with us. 5 of us made brief presentations to her about why we favored the private system, and the chairman of the Mayo Clinic and others like that. I got a chance to speak a little bit, but then we gave her a chance to visit with us and dialogue with us about what it was that she was advocating. And after a while, she finally said, "What you folks had to say about the private system has merit, but it's not universally applied across the United States." Then the real key point that she had was this. She raised her hand up high and said, the only way the private system works is if we have the hand of government over your head. And if you get out of line, we'll drop it on you. Well, it stunned us.
Yeah.
And that was not a political statement. That was a statement of someone who had a theory or a belief system. So when she left, we determined that we were going to have to be active in the debate, and many of us went to different meetings, on television interviews, editorial boards, and so forth, to explain that we thought we had a better approach than having the government-sponsored approach. Mrs. Clinton was an ideologue, and they're a lot different than a political person is. Politics, they give and take. Ideologues don't do that. So she didn't get it through Congress. I think our group had something to do with that.
Fantastic. Well, that was about the time I was looking for a Christmas gift for you and found in a catalog some golf balls that could be personalized with a photo. And so I cut out a photo of Hillary Clinton and ordered you about 4 dozen golf balls so that you and your physician friends could take it out on her on the golf course.
Well, I did. I was stunned when I opened the gift and had her picture there. but one day I had some golf balls in the bag, and I decided I'd just play with it. So I teed it up, and there she was. I don't know what I thought or what I said, but I hadn't driven a ball like that in that long time. I just laughed about it. The overreaction or what, but it was fun to do, and I've told people about that.
Well, it was a little catharsis from me on that. All right, Dad, so let's fast forward to Obamacare. Can you briefly, in a nutshell, explain what Obamacare has done to the healthcare system?
Well, as Mr. Trump said, it's been a disaster. It was driven on a political basis of being sure that that persuasion of political thought was implemented in healthcare. It'd been a long time dream of the liberal community to have socialized medicine or government controlled medicine, and they put it in, and it just didn't work well at all. The results were that if you destroy the mechanisms and the incentives that exist, you will get consequences that you don't want. And they got that. They got they couldn't control the cost of it. So, as you know, in recent times, the premiums have been terribly high and going up, and they destroyed the desire of practitioners to stay because they began to disrupt their payment systems and so forth. So all of a sudden, you get a decrease in providers, decrease in doctors, a weakened healthcare system financially, and you get a dissatisfied public. So, and I've been listening, interestingly, to what they're saying now. If you're going to repeal it, what are you going to do with the 20 million who've got health care? What they've done in their numbers, there are some new people who have it, and many thousands of people who had health care that can't afford it now. Yeah. But they say, well, we got 20 million people or whatever that number is. What's going to happen to them? Well, a lot of those 20 million people were on Medicaid before Obamacare happened. They were just switched over from one fund to the other, so they're not newly covered people at all. It has really, really been bad, and I'm so pleased that they've got some people, Dr. Price, who's going to chair this initiative of looking at it. He's been working on it for years. He's an orthopedic surgeon. His wife is a physician, and he's the one that already before this came up, as a result of our election, he already has done a repeal and redesign of Obamacare, and that's what he's going to be bringing forth. So he's going to be able to hit the ground running. I think so. Excellent. I think he can, and all the commentators generally that I listen to are very, very high on him and what he's done, and they say, well, if you're going to repeal it, what are you going to replace it with? Well, Dr. Price has got an offer on that. And that includes health savings accounts? Yeah, all kinds of modifications on ways that you can get your coverage. And some people only want catastrophic coverage. They don't need to pay for the premiums. And then you had the imbalance of Obamacare, of the younger being forced into it so they could pay for the older. That didn't work.
Well, Dad, isn't catastrophic the way health insurance really started? Didn't they used to call it hospital insurance, and it was only to cover illnesses severe enough for hospitalization?
Well, yeah, to a certain extent. The whole idea of prepaying for health care started at Baylor back during the Depression, and nobody had any money, nobody had any health care coverage, but the hospital worked out an arrangement with the Dallas school teachers, and the school teachers paid 50 cents a month in advance for their hospital care. And that was the beginning of the prepayment idea and essentially the founding of Blue Cross initiative that went across the United States.
Right here at Baylor in Dallas, Texas. Unbelievable.
That's right.
Well, Dad, Mr. Powell, we appreciate you being with us today. And real quick, how do you feel about Donald Trump's impending presidency? Hopeful?
Well, I read something today that, I want to believe, and it's this, that 30 years from now, because he's a pragmatic business guy who will not have to play the political stuff as a maximum way to try to get something done. But if he's doing what business people do. You make your assessments and you make your strategies, and you go ahead and you put key people in the strategic places to get the job done. Well, that's what he's done, and this one person has forecast that maybe 30 years from now, there's a possibility we may look at Mr. Trump as the best president we've ever had.
I think so.
I hope that'll be true.
I hope so, too. Well, thanks again for spending some time with us today, Dad.
Well, I'm proud of you being involved in this internet stuff. I can barely turn on my computer, but I know you know how. All right, honey. Thank you.
Love you, Dad.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.